Hey homies, welcome back. You all know what time it is. It's demo time. So today we're going to be going and we're going to be adding different layers, getting a little bit more into the weeds with Photoshop. We're going to be taking the guy that we edited last time, kind of making him into like a little, I don't know, poster thing. So if you could please, let's go and find our file from last time, the my dude. Hopefully you still got that nice kind of black and white image. If not, get it to a black and white image, and we're gonna get going. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to be working a little bit destructively. I'm going to teach you guys some tools that are a little bit more complicated, but I hope that if you get them, your workflow will be a little bit faster. So we're going to work somewhat destructive, but we're also going to be still using masks. So it's going to be this kind of hybrid, slightly destructive, a lot of masks and layers, so we can still fix stuff if we mess up. So that's kind of the plan. And I wanted to add in some more pro tips just so I can get you all working a little faster, kind of make your workflow a little bit easier. So let's be taking good notes on this. So we got our guy up. Before we get too into the weeds, I've updated Photoshop yet again. So let's go and get our workspace all the same. Remember, if we go to Windows, Workspace, make sure we're all on the essentials. You know, you might be in 2022. I'm in 2024. So let's get that workspace looking all the same. Okay, so what we're going to first do is we're going to go and take out all of the dark values out of this drawing. We're going to put it into another drawing or another digital file, digital image, whatever. And how we're going to do that is pretty easy, but it takes a few steps. There's a couple different ways of going about this. I'm going to show you that I think the easiest one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we've been working in layers, and let's go over to channels. In channels, you're going to notice I have a CMYK file. Hopefully you got one too. If not, we can switch it. It's not the end of the world. But as I go, and let's just do this. I'm going to grab my paint bucket for a second. I'm going to paint some colors in there real quick. If I go and I paint some colors into this, we can see that in my channels, I have a cyan, a magenta, a yellow, and what's the K, which means key, like a key drawing, but that's black. So if I go and I turn those off, you can see now the amount of red in the drawing, the amount of yellow, or the amount of that black. Okay? So that's kind of cool. Channels, you can edit those different ranges of color. So sometimes you're working in photography, you want to be editing what's happening in your reds or your greens. Maybe you're doing color separations for a screen print. Channels can be really helpful for that. But what I'm going to use the channels for is something a little bit different. We're going to use it to kind of just take out one of the colors. And for the sake of making this really easy, let's switch from CMYK to grayscale. So if you remember from last time, we're going to go to Image, Mode, and then we can switch it from CMYK, RGB, grayscale. Those are probably the main ones that you're going to be using. So I'm going to go switch it to grayscale real quick. It's going to ask me if I want to okay that. Yeah, we're going to okay it. Okay, so now over here, my channels, all I got is gray. So if I make any edits, it's just going to be what's happening in those gray values. That's overly simple to understand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select my image. And when I select it, it'll pick everything that's not gray. So it's really easy. Hold down Command, go click on that bar that says gray. If you click on the word, it might make you want to rename it, but if you click right over to the right of that word, we can see the little ants pop up. They're marching. So we've selected everything that doesn't have gray, which we could delete and we could start working from there, but we're going to try to work smarter, not harder. So we've selected everything that doesn't have gray in it. We need to go and get the opposite of that. We want to get our values so we can go and edit those and change those into colors and all that kind of stuff. So if I hit Command I, you're going to notice that Command I inverts something. So it's going to make the whites now black. Okay, you might want to write that down. That could be helpful for down the road. Command I is going to invert. That doesn't really help us in this instance right now because we're just taking all that background white and changing the colors. So Command I changes the color, but if you want to invert what you've selected, we go Command or Control or Command I Shift. And now you can see that our ants are walking around in a slightly different pattern because now they're just walking around the blacks in that image. So Command I Shift will invert what we have selected. Command I will invert colors. Okay. Hopefully that's not too complicated. So I've got that selected. Let's go over to our layers again. So I'm switching for channels to layers. I'm going to make a new layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my original layer. I'm going to copy it. Command C. So I've copied all those black layers, all those different values. And I'm going to go up to my new one, Command V. And look at that. I can go get rid of that other one. And now I have all my values, but all the whites are transparent. So there's a couple different ways of doing this. I find this one's a little bit more helpful, a little bit quicker to understand. But just remembering those hotkeys to select the thing in the channels, Command click, and then to invert what you selected, Command Shift I. Okay, so let's do this. We got our dude. We're going to want to bring him into a new document. So I'm going to first go click on my layer where there's nothing in the background. I'm going to go and hit Command C to copy that. I could save this and we could open it up in a new document, but I'm going to be a little lazy. I'm just going to copy it real quick. And let's go in and make a new doc. So we're going to go File, New. I need to make a document. I have no idea what size this is. Something that's kind of cool about Photoshop, you might already know this, but if you go and copy an image, just like the one I did, or if you copy something off the internet, when it makes a new document, it's going to go look at your clipboard, which you have copied recently, and it's going to make that new document the size of whatever that file is, because it assumes you're just going to go drop it in there. But what I need to do is I need to make a document that is the size of a normal piece of paper, so it's going to be 8.5 wide, so 8.5 inches wide, 11 tall. Let's go 300 on that resolution. So keeping that resolution at 300 dpi. And then our color mode, let's go to CMYK. So 8.5 by 11, 300 CMYK, and then click Create. Okay, so I got a white piece of paper. I'm going to bring my guy into this. I could go and hit File, Place, Embed, and do that whole thing that we do in Illustrator. I can also just go Command V because I've already got him copied and he's in there. So you can copy things from one document to the next pretty easily. You know, you can copy layers, you can copy a whole bunch of masks and all of your adjustment layers and bring them over from one to the next. Just want to make sure we all know that. I had some seniors I never worked with before, and I just realized they don't know that stuff yet, so I had to show them in person. Anyways, we've copied our guy over. Let's go and move him around a little bit. I want him to come down just a little bit. He's like right dead center. I'm going to bring him down. So maybe there's like the same amount of space on the bottom as there is on the sides. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to select both my guy and my background. I'm going to make sure it's centered up by using those align tools. We also need to make sure that we are labeling things as we go. So my background, we're just going to keep that white. I'm going to keep it locked too. I'm going to take my drawing layer, label it drawing. And this might not be as important right now because I'm only going to be working with maybe 10 layers. But when you get to a project where there's 20, 100 layers, it's probably important to start to title things up, group them in folders, just so you can stay sane, know what things are, so you're not spending a half an hour trying to find out where one layer is. Okay, so I got my guy in there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change his color. I don't want that drawing to be black. I want it to be a different color. There's a lot of different ways we can go about this. Some people might go and grab the paint bucket and try to click on all the different spots that are black. That would take forever to do. There's a really easy way of doing this. So I'm going to select my drawing layer. And we have a couple different versions of lock in Photoshop. Illustrator, we just got the normal lock, and that locks it, so I can't edit it. But in Photoshop, it's fancy. It's got a few different versions to lock. There's one where we can lock the ratio of that artboard or that frame. We can lock the position of where that object is in the composition. We can lock the pixels in the image. Or we could lock the transparent pixels in the image. Okay? So if you click the lock, it locks, in theory, all of those things, but you can lock the specific things. So let's go over to the one that's on the far left that looks kind of like a checkerboard. And we're going to lock the transparent pixels. So the cool thing about this is I can go and paint on my dude here. Whatever is transparent won't be affected. Whatever is not transparent, I can edit. So I could go and paint these line work in here different color with the paintbrush. Pretty easy to see me doing that right now. And if I wanted to fill it in, I could do that really, really quickly too. How a lot of people do this, like I said, they're going to use that paint bucket, but I rarely ever touch the paint bucket anymore. What I do is I use a lot of times a rectangle. So I got my rectangle. We talked about this, I think, before. If I go and switch my rectangle from shape, because that's how it's set up, to pixels, I can go and drag over this whole dude. And now it's going to go change all of the pixels from that black, all the ones that aren't transparent, to that color. I'm going to pick a different color. I kind of work in this way because it's really quick. So I can go just pick another color, drag another rectangle over it. Oop, didn't get the whole thing. Got to drag it like that. But this locking transparency, I use a lot. And then I can go paint into this additional, try to make some of the lines darker, some of the lines lighter if I wanted to. But remember, if you want to go edit not everything, maybe just what's not transparent, you can lock that down. You can use a paintbrush. You can switch a rectangle over to pixels and just kind of drag it across. So I got my guy. I've changed the color. I like that purple. I've kind of cooking showed this. I've done it a couple times before we started, so I kind of know what my colors are. You can play around with that a little bit if you want. But now that we do that, let's go and we're going to go and mask our head, because I want to go have some color inside this drawing. And now we're going to go switch gears a little bit. We're going to start work in more and more layers. So I want to make a mask inside my little guy's face. So I'm going to go grab the magic wand. So if you got that object select, go hold down on that and find that magic wand. And I'm just going to click inside the head. So our ants start walking around there. And if you ever notice, you might have used a paint bucket before in some of these programs, and notice that sometimes you go and select something, you have that auto select, and right along the edges of stuff, there's sometimes like still some white, and it's kind of really annoying. You could adjust the selection tool, but I have a really kind of quick way of going and making sure that whatever you select, it doesn't have that kind of white fuzziness around the edge. So what we're going to do is we got those ants marching around. We got a section selected, and we're going to expand it just so it's just a few more pixels so we don't have to go and do as much cleanup down the road. So I'm going to expand what I selected by going to up at the top. There's a select button. Click on that. A drop down falls down. We're going to go to modify, and then we're going to go to expand. So select, modify, expand. And then once you do this, a window is going to pop up. You can see mine set to 3. Usually to 1 to 3 is probably what you're going to keep it at. But a lot of times when I'm doing color separations and stuff, I might go bump it up a tiny bit more. But let's just keep it at 1 to 3. We're going to hit OK. And you can see that our selection area just got a little bit bigger. This is going to help us so we got a little less to clean up, and life is good. I use this one a lot. I actually made this one a hotkey on my own computer just to save me time. So if you need that, let me know. I can kind of work with you and we can make it a hotkey. But I'm constantly using that magic wand, hitting that hotkey, expanding out and making masks. So now that we've expanded it, let's go make a new mask, or a new layer, my bad. So let's go click the new layer button, and then we're going to go mask it real quick. So down at the bottom, remember there's that rectangle with a circle in the middle of it. Go click on that and it'll mask it out for us. So we got this new mask. I'm going to have this be the head color. That's what I'm labeling it as. We don't got anything in there. I'm going to go click not on my mask, but on that transparent section of the mask. And I'm going to go grab a color that I like, use my rectangle, and there we go. We got some color happening in there. And my mask isn't perfect right now. There still is quite a bit of sections that could be cleaned up. So let's go clean up that mask. So what I'm going to do to clean up that mask is I'm going to go click on the mask layer. I'm going to make sure that we have that image where we can see there's black in the background and then there's white where the mask is visible. Go click on that little button because we have the transparent. We have that kind of chain link in the middle. We'll talk about that down in a second. And then on the far right of that layer, we have the mask. So click on that mask. And we're going to edit it here in 1 sec. Okay, so editing a mask is pretty easy. We can do it with a paintbrush. So grab yourself a paintbrush. Maybe go get a really standard brush. Nothing too fancy. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint into this mask. So instead of, using the eraser tool, I often will just edit a mask and I'll keep on working with that mask, get to where I like it, and then I'll go copy it to other things. So it just saves my workflow a little bit of time. It's really easy to edit. If I need to go edit stuff, it's not as destructive. Life's good. So if we're going to go paint into this thing, there's kind of a thing to remember. And that is, I'm going to go drag my mask. Before I tell you that, I'm going to drag my mask with my kind of blue layer underneath my kind of head color. But if I want to edit that mask, if I paint white onto my mask, you can see that it's going to reveal, right? If I go and switch my paintbrush from white to black, it's going to conceal. And I'm switching back and forth from the paint that's in the foreground to the paint that's in the background, because in this program there isn't a stroke and a fill. There's just these two paint swatches. I showed some of you this. Sorry if I'm being a little redundant, but remember, if we hit the X button, I can switch from that foreground color and that background color. And I got it set up. You can go click on it right above it. Our paint swatches down there on the left, there's like a little white and black one. If you click on that, it'll set your colors to white and black. There's a reason for that, and that's because you're working in masks. So if we got white selected, we can go through. I'm going to zoom in a hair bit. And we can clean up this mask. So black will conceal. White's going to reveal. At least it's doing that today for me. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to paint over it. I'm editing my mask because, one, I'm going to use this mask again on another layer. And two, I'm just going to clean it up. If I go and paint too much, no tears, just go hit X, switch to black, go and edit that back. I'm working on a tablet, so sorry if I'm working a little bit quicker than you. I do have a hotkey kind of built into my tablet for this. So go around, kind of clean up stuff, making sure that we don't get any little gappies of white. Once we got that going, we'll move on to the next phase. So remembering that we can edit that mask by using the paintbrush, painting white and black. That hotkey X will switch our paint colors from black to white, or whatever colors you have. Other cool thing is too, you can use like grays to make the mask be more transparent. We'll get into editing masks and feathering and transparency down the road. But right now we're kind of doing hard edge stuff, so we don't have to get that crazy with it. Okay, so we're going to go add some shadows to this image. I'm going to make another layer. It's going to go on top of that kind of head color layer. I'm going to call this one head shadows. Why not? That sounds kind of ominous. So we got that layer there. And what I'm going to do, just because I'm going to be working smarter, not harder, I'm going to go click on my mask from before. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and drag it up to that new head shadows layer. And I copied it on there. And what that's going to allow me to do is I can edit and paint inside that new layer. And it's kind of got like the bumpers up, like I'm like bowling with bumpers. I'm going to be able to go and paint inside that mask. Not have to worry about coloring outside of the lines because it's already masked. So I'm going to go grab a little bit of a darker kind of blue color, I think. Yeah. I'm going to go around and start to add some shadows to my guy. So I got those. I got that mask kind of rolling. You can see that. I can kind of just whip around here, not worrying too terribly much if I'm painting inside the lines or not, because I got that mask. Kind of rough it out. So I'm giving a little darker blue shadows to stuff. Gonna edit it still here in a second. Just kind of roughing it out. Okay, that looks decent-ish. Another kind of trick. So there's some spots where I kind of goofed up. You know, I could go take an eraser and erase into this, but why do that when I could easily go and, you know, if you've worked with an eraser, you kind of get annoyed because at times maybe you really like a brush. I'm going to grab a brush. And you wish you could erase with that brush. You could use that texture. But when you go to the eraser, you start to erase and it goes back to your standard eraser. So there's ways of adjusting that, but I don't like use the eraser that much in this program. Not because I'm like good or anything. It's because like with the paint bucket tool, I don't use that because I use my rectangle. I do the same thing with my brush. So I go and say I got this texture brush right here. I want to erase with this texture brush. So I go up to the top where my brush stats are. There's that mode. I can click on it. Right now it's normal. I could have it do all these other effects. I could have it make things darker. I could have it kind of switch to it's the difference, but I'm going to go down to clear. And now I'm just painting. And as I'm painting, it's now erasing. So I've kind of switched my brush from being a painting tool to being an erasing tool, which I find really helpful if I want to go and switch it back from clear to normal. It's still a painting tool. But I kind of work like this quite often where I'll just, instead of grabbing the eraser, I just go up here, switch it from normal to clear, and then I find it a little bit easier, a little bit of a quicker workflow to do that. Okay, so we've learned that we can erase a little bit even with our brushes. So go get that shadow shapes kind of how you want them. And we'll move on to maybe, I'm going to make another layer real quick. I'm going to give my guy some eye color. His pupils need a little something. So remember, if you ever have an issue when you're working with your brushes, go up there and check. A lot of times people forget to switch it from clear, or sometimes it gets stuck on dissolve depending on what kind of brush you're using. So normal will paint, some of the other ones won't. And I'm going to go grab maybe this darker blue. I'll go give him a little color inside his pupils. Yeah, that's looking good. Kind of went a little bit out of the line, so I'm going to click on that clear again and just go clean it up a tiny bit. Wow, looking great. You're doing good. I'm doing good. We're all loving this demo. We're taking good notes. And we're ready to move on to the next thing. So I'm going to go and bring in a texture. And I'm going to go change that texture to a color, kind of like how I did with the little drawing here. But thinking about this upcoming project, how you can bring textures in and kind of layer them up. How we need to be scanning some stuff from the real world and not just working with things that we find online or the standard brushes. So let's do this. Let's go File, Open, and find that brush that we went and downloaded for this demo. I gotta take a second to find it because my workspace is a mess because it's that point in the semester. So I'm gonna go open up my brush. I got this brush mark like so. And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna do the same steps that we did before, right? We wanna take the kind of dark values out of this and bring it into the other project. So let's go to our image mode. We're already working in grayscale. Beautiful. So we're going to go to channels. We want to select those colors. So we're going to hit Command and click on that gray layer or the gray channel. So it selects it. Then we're going to hit Command, Shift, I, and then it's going to invert it. Let's go copy that guy, Command C. And then I'm going to go bring it into my new project. Maybe I'll make a new layer just to be safe. Command V, boom, right there. Okay, so I got this brush. It's going to be like some paint over his face, trying to figure out where I'm going to put it. We could go and adjust the size, kind of rotate it, kind of move it around. So I'm trying to figure out how this is going to be situated. One thing I could do too is I could go copy my mask from my kind of head layers that I got here. So I'm going to hold down Option, drag my mask up to that new paintbrush layer. Maybe I'm going to go title that brush real quick. And we can start to get a better understanding of how these two things are going to work together. It's looking okay, but maybe I still want to edit a little bit, move it around a little bit more. Some more kind of pro tip stuff. So we have our transparent layer on the left. We have this chain in the middle, and then we have our mask where it's that black and white on the right. So if I go click on that chain in the middle, I can still go and click on the chain, turn it off, go click on that transparent kind of object layer. I can still move this guy around. I could even still change the scale and stuff. This is very helpful because maybe sometimes you want to keep that mask so you can see what you're doing, but maybe you want to go edit what's being masked a little bit more. So kind of moving around, going and adjusting it. If you notice, if you messed up, you'll figure out pretty quick. If you're clicking on the mask, our mask is going to move, but our object's going to stay the same, right? So clicking on the layer that we want to go be adjust. I don't know. We'll just go with something like that. So I'm going to go make sure that link is still linked for the future. And let's do this. We want to change the color of this paint smear. And I have no idea. Don't don't ask me why I did this. I gave him a smear across his face. I came up with this demo late one night. But I want to change this paint smear to maybe red. Maybe this dude's like a little warrior. I'm going to click on my paint mark where we have the transparent background, not the mask. I'm going to go click on that checkerboard so I lock the transparent pixels. I'm going to go grab my rectangle again, making sure that it's on pixel. And I'm going to go drag over it. Maybe I'm going to go get like a nice red color. And boom, now it's switched to red. Other things I can do. I like this nice red, but I feel like it doesn't fully fit. It seems a little off, so I'm going to make it just a tiny bit transparent so it starts to kind of gel a little bit more with those other colors. But still, it seems a little flat. So I'm going to go make a darker red. I'm going to paint into this layer a little bit. So I went and made a darker red. I still have got that checkerboard, that lock transparent. I'm still selecting my paintbrush layer, not the mask, and I'm going to go grab my paintbrush again. Making sure that's on normal. I'm going to go paint into this, so it's going to give it like a little shadowiness to it. Just kind of darken it up a little bit. You know, you could get wild with it and use other colors. It's going to look like trash. This is the really cool thing about it. You can go and paint into that paintbrush. Maybe I want to go even a little bit darker than that red. Yeah, there we go. I don't know. He's looking okay. I think the original version I did might be a little bit more successful, but whatever. This is making sense, hopefully. So we got that paintbrush. We went and edited it. We painted into the actual brush once we changed the color. Now we're going to start to shift gears a little bit. We're going to start working on our background. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and first, we're going to make a background mask by clicking on our original drawing, grabbing our magic wand, and go clicking on the background, right? And just like before, we want to go and adjust that selection a little bit just to save us some time. So we're going to go select, modify, expand. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to expand it out a little bit. Maybe I'm making a new layer and then masking it. Not maybe, that's what I'm doing. So now I got this mask layer that I'm going to drag below that kind of head drawing layer, or maybe even below everybody besides my background, and I can start working with that. So what we're going to do in this new layer is we're going to go and create a gradient. So I'm going to go find my gradients. So the gradient tool is either under the paint bucket tool. So I got a gradient there. I've quick and showed this a little bit, so I can go draw this gradient over top of it. That's starting to work there. I realized that my gradient colors might need to be adjusted. So just like in the previous gradient, you can go in Illustrator, you can go click on those different nodes on the gradient there and adjust the colors, right? You can adjust the slider. It's hopefully pretty standard stuff. I noticed that I'm working with the new gradients, which is a little bit more helpful. You can go and adjust those sliders. There's a classic gradient, and my gradient was being dumb, and my mask didn't work on it. So let's go grab our mask from before and drag it up onto that gradient layer, so making sure that it works. There we go. The eyes start to pop a little bit more. We can make those adjustments. Other things to kind of talk about masks. So you can grab one, throw it on another layer, pretty standard stuff. If you right click on the mask, you could disable or delete the mask. So some people use that to cut stuff out. Let's just disable it just for a second. So boom, it's gone. I can go click on it again, it comes back. Let's go adjust our mask just for 1 minute. I see that there's a couple white spots on the top right part of his head that's kind of bugging me. So I'm going to go grab my paintbrush tool. I'm going to go paint into that mask real quick. Kind of cleaning that up. So just cleaning up that one spot, or a couple spots where it didn't get selected too well. So we got that gradient that's masked. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring another texture in. So let's go do this. Let's go find the texture that you downloaded. We're going to do the same steps as before. So open it up in Photoshop. We're going to go to our channels. Oh no, this time it's in RGB. So let's go switch the image mode from RGB, where it's that red, green, blue, to grayscale, just because it makes it a little bit easier to select out some of these colors. And then we're going to, you know these steps at this point. Command click, Command Shift I, copy. Then we're going to bring it over to this image that we're working on. So we got this texture in here. I'm going to go rotate it, resize it up, kind of get it how I want it. I'm going to click the OK button, right? Because we need to confirm stuff, because sometimes it's annoying and it wants us to confirm. Hopefully I got this texture in its own layer. That's all looking good. We can see that it's over top of the gradient, and we can see that some of our grays and stuff are a little bit present. That's fine, because we're going to do that classic rectangle trick that I do all the time. But let's do this. I'm going to go grab my mask from the gradient layer. I'm going to go hold down Option yet again and drag it up to that texture that I just put in there. Maybe I'm going to label that texture so I know in the future. But I got my texture. It's right now black and white. It's got that mask on it. And yet again, I'm going to go and adjust the colors. So I'm going to go click on not the lock, but that locking transparent, so that little checkerboard lock. And this time we're going to go, instead of painting into this, I'm going to go use a gradient into it. So if I use the new gradient, it's not going to work. It's annoying. It's something that kind of frustrating when I first figured it out. The new gradient you can fine tune a lot more, but you're going to have to go click and switch to the classic gradient. Just like if you're using the rectangle, you need to go switch it from paths to pixels or whatever. So we go to the classic gradient. We can't fine tune it as much, but if I go and click on the transparent layer, or that layer thumbnail, not the gradient, but the layer thumbnail, and I go and I drag my gradient over top of everything, boom. I'm going to go change those textures to a gradient now, right? And I kind of did the inverse, the opposite direction. So the reds are going in the blues, and then the blues are in the reds, just so there's a little bit more texture in there. So hopefully you're starting to kind of get some ideas about how you can work in the future with gradients, how you can make things that are these kind of transparent layers, kind of painting into them or using gradients into them. So there's a lot more color play going on. Hopefully working in these kind of layers that we go and copy and paste onto other layers and masks, working with multiple masks is opening up some possibilities for the future. Okay, almost done, folks. Next up, we're going to add a little text to this. So I'm going to go just above that brush layer. I'm going to make a text layer. We've all done this before. So grab the text tool. I'm going to go click. I'm going to call this one little guy, I think. Confirm that. So I've kind of done this more than once. So I already got a typeface selected. I know I like this typeface at 150 points. Maybe I'm going to go center that up real quickly by using my alignment tools. Boom. Okay. So hopefully the type tool feels all familiar of working with in Illustrator. The flyout menus all look the same. They just might be a little bit more complicated to get to them. We got the properties over here. So if you are looking for that flyout menu, on the right side there are those properties. Or if you go click on that little folder, you're going to get the same flyout menu that you've seen a billion times in Illustrator. So go adjust it. I'm going to go adjust my leading a little bit, because I kind of like it to be a little tighter with this typeface. I feel like the auto is just a little too loose. Okay, that's looking okay. We could go and kern that up a hair bit too. So I'm going to do that really, really quick while you're figuring out stuff. I'm using the hotkeys. The hotkeys are the same as Illustrator for kerning, or you can go use the drop downs over here. So we got that going. I'm going to hit the OK button to confirm here in a second. Maybe I want a different color. I want this kind of purple, the purple of my guy from before. Kind of keep that cohesive color wise. Okay, looking decent. So we got that going. Maybe I want a little texture in this type, right? In Illustrator, we have these options to take a type box and switch it to being vectors that we can go and edit. In Photoshop, it's a little bit different. We don't have that where you can make it be vectors, but we can make it be raster. So if I want to rasterize it, which means making it be pixels that I can then go and paint into, it's simple. You just go and right click on, not the T, not the little guy, or whatever you called it, but right to the right of that, go right click there. That flyout menu pops up, or we could duplicate or merge stuff. And if we scroll down, there's a rasterized type. And now it's rasterized. It's now pixels that I can edit. Another way of doing that is you can just go, maybe click on the eraser tool or click on a paintbrush and go click on it, and then it'll ask you, do you want to rasterize this? I just find the flyouts a little bit quicker. Now that we got this here, I'm going to go and give it a little texture. But maybe before I do that, I want to go, and I'm going to be using my paintbrushes. So I want to save a little time so I don't have as much cleanup. So I'm going to go grab my magic wand. I got my magic wand set to not the standard kind of magic wand, but if you go to that second setting up at the top left where there's the two boxes where you get the plus sign, I'm going to go and add and click on all these different layers. So I've got just those different words or layers selected. So remember, you can get to that by holding down Command, but if you just go up top and switch it to add, you got that option, add to selection. So I got all of my letters selected. And now I'm going to go paint into this just a little bit. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush again, maybe go and try to find a paintbrush that has a little texture. I'm going to go make it be clear because I'm actually going to use it as an eraser. I'm going to go texturize this up a little bit. I kind of like this. I'm kind of painting in the lines. If I do too much texture, not a problem. I'm going to go back to normal. I'm going to make sure I got the right color selected, and I'm going to go paint back into it. So I like to always kind of be painting inside of stuff that's selected. Not always, but when doing stuff like this, because it just makes life a little easier. Maybe I'm going to go grab one of the brushes that I made and kind of give it a little bit more texture. Okay, fair enough. Looking okay. So we got this, we got it selected, and maybe I want to go do a few more edits to this thing. It's looking okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and make a new layer. And I still have those text selected, so I'm going to take the text that I got selected, and I'm going to go click the mask button, so that layer is now masked. If I need it to be, I feel like my type just isn't yet kind of clicking with the background. So maybe I'm going to go switch the mode of that type. So I'm going to go click on my type layer again. I'm going to go switch it to multiply, or maybe try out some of these other modes. You can see they're doing different things, but I think multiply might help it. Maybe I might make it a tiny bit transparent. So there's opacity in our layers, and then there is fill, which fill sometimes will make the effects a little bit more transparent than the overall thing. You could try that out to see that difference, but I'm just going to crank the fill down just a tiny bit on multiply. Hopefully I get some of the background stuff I can see through a little bit of it. Yeah, looking okay. Let's go to that new layer that I made. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go grab my red brush mark that I had from before. I'm going to hold down Option. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to go drag that, maybe just that red brush, into that new layer that's masked. Nope, won't let me. Okay, so maybe I'm going to go duplicate my red brush layer real quick. Going to unlock it. Going to go get rid of the mask from the head by right-clicking, disabling. So let's get rid of that mask really quick, or just dragging it to the trash can. Ooh. Not that at all. So I got the second one. I want some of this red to go over, maybe little like this. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, something like that. And then let's go grab our new mask that I made for just the type, drag that over that second paintbrush that I went and kind of rotated around, readjusted, and then replace that. Voila. Okay. So hopefully that wasn't too quick. I just kind of duplicated the brush from one layer to the next and then turned it around, took that new kind of mask that I made for the text and threw it on to the brush. So once you kind of get the workflow down a little bit, it is pretty quick just to kind of jump from one layer to the next, kind of copying and pasting these masks and working a little bit more fluidly. But there's a lot of creativity, a lot of things you can do within this that other programs I feel like you just can't. So we got this all going. Let's go and do this. We could save this as a Photoshop file right now if we want to keep editing. We could go and also, if you want to submit this, save it as a JPEG and upload it. But if you got questions, ask me. If you want me to go more in depth with any of these tools, let me know. But turn in stuff, and I guess we'll be looking at sketches and working on the upcoming project. Congrats, folks. Bye-bye.